Welcome to In the World of Winooski. I'm Mayor Christine Lott, and today we're going to learn about efforts over recent years to update Winooski's zoning and land use regulations in order to support our community's strategic vision. Joining me today are Mike O'Brien, Chair of the Winooski Planning Commission and former mayor, and Ravi Venkataraman, Director of City Planning. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining me. Wanted to give folks some insight into work that's been going on with our land use regulations, or more informally known as zoning. There's been a lot of changes in recent years, and I think there's a lot of connection to housing, which is a big priority concern, and want to give folks some insight into how these things work together. So, Ravi, I was hoping you could kick us off with a quick summary, sort of high level. What is zoning or land use regulation?
Sure, yeah. So the intent of zoning is to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of Winooski residents through regulating the built environment. So what does that mean? So in the ULUDR, in our Unified Land Use and Development Regulations, we have regulations that regulate the pattern of development in the city. It also regulates the uses and how people can use their land. We're also looking at how these two intersect with how people move through the environment as well. So that's, I guess, at a very broad strokes level, what zoning is and does.
And so these are like local regulations that the city enforces, and the Planning Commission is the body of resident volunteers who help us develop those. Mike, you've served on the Planning Commission for a few years now.
Yeah, almost 10, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little history of some of the big updates that you've seen over your time with the city?
Yeah, so I know you want me to go back a couple of decades because
a little bit, yeah, to the downtown revitalization. I think you know
Right.
a little bit more about than I do.
Yeah. So back in the early 2000s, I'm sure most folks know, we redeveloped the downtown core of Winooski, and as part of that process, we rezoned that area, downtown core, and what that made up was the area that was included in our TIF district, Tax Increment Finance District. And we did a tax increment finance district to pay for needed infrastructure to get the development done. So it was roads and water and sewer and all those kind of things, and what you see today. So we rezoned that downtown core, and what happened was there was a master plan approved by the City Council. It got approval from the Vermont Environmental District, what's it called? Vermont Environmental, well, the Act 250 folks.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, approved it. And so all the development down there had to get approval from the council and Act 250 permits. And that still is the case today, although I think there's only two developable lots left that will probably never get developed. That's the east and west pad sites is what we called them back in the day. Anyway, so from that, in the downtown core, we've developed 516 new housing units, and there are 83 under development right now, along with the hotel, and another parking garage. And interestingly, when we put the first parking garage in with 900 and some odd spaces, we thought, we're never going to fill this. Well, lo and behold, I think it's overbooked, or has been, historically.
Yeah.
So, that was the downtown. That was back in 2004, I think it was, 2003, when we put that into place. Well, the TIF district started in 2004.
Okay.
And ended in 2024, successfly, I believe.
Yeah, we paid off all that debt.
Paid off all the debt, yeah.
New tax revenue coming in, those new household units you mentioned, and a lot of new business.
Yeah. So what the TIF district did is the extra value it set a base value for the properties in that district, and anything over that, I think it was just the education fund, went to pay off the debt. And we took out a roughly $24 million loan back then and paid it off. Thank goodness.
Yeah, definitely.
So then the next big change was really, excuse me, I think it was 2015 or 16, we implemented form-based code. And that was to establish what we call gateway districts. So that was Main Street, East Allen Street, and Mounts Bay Avenue as gateways into the city. And we did that because we wanted to spur development in those areas, get more housing and commercial uses, and make it easier for developers to get permits. And I think that was pretty successful, though I will
Still
say
in
honestly,
progress.
yeah, some of the buildings that have gone up weren't what I imagined, but it is what it is, right? So they've put in, 209 new housing units along the gateways, and there's 72 units that are in the early stages of development up on Upper Main Street, and some, quite a few new commercial uses too along the corridor. So again, that was to spur development, to build our tax base, and our population, and so far so good.
Yeah, definitely. I think people like to refer to it as upzoning, allowing bigger buildings or more density so that we can have that growth and development. You sort of alluded to this in your commentary on some of the buildings, but in recent years, there's been focus on sort of tweaking the regulations and what's been adopted in zoning. A big piece of that has been trying to create more affordable and family-sized housing. And so, Revi, I wonder if you could talk about that for a little bit, how we've been working towards that.
Sure. I'll probably pop over to that slide that has that comparison. Did I pass it?
I think so. Is it this? Priority housing incentives?
So, yes, thanks. The Planning Commission had worked on incentivizing the development of housing that is larger, family size, 3 or more bedrooms, primarily focusing in our residential districts. So before last summer, I believe starting from 2022 to last summer, the city had these incentives in place that tried to spur the creation of three-plus bedroom units throughout our residential districts. However, looking at our data, this didn't spur that much. That developers, property owners weren't really tapping into trying to use these types of incentives to create more units. So the Planning Commission and city staff went back to the drawing board and expanded these priority housing incentives widely. So instead of simply allowing for more units on a property or in a building if it has 3 or more bedrooms, the city now expanded lot coverage. It allowed for reductions in parking amounts depending on the location of the proposed development. So if it's located on our corridors, then the developer could get a slight reduction in parking. And then there's the bonus story allowance, which is set in Vermont state statute, along with this neat quirk that if a project has 3 or 4 units, half the units are 3 or more bedrooms, and those units are affordably priced, then it could fly through the permitting process as long as it met all the other requirements that's in our zoning regulations. And it allows for this expanded lot coverage. Instead of 50%, which is the maximum lot coverage in our residential districts, those types of projects could get 75% lot coverage. And the reason for this is to spur housing, spur larger size housing, spur affordable housing, but also home ownership within our residential districts. So while those incentives might seem generous, we're not seeing that many of those types of projects, and we're trying to spur those types of projects as much as possible.
If I can jump in, because one of the discussions on the Planning Commission we had was, and we continue to have, is how do you incentivize home ownership as opposed to rental? And that's very difficult to do through zoning regulations. And we had, as Revi had said, we had put in some incentives to try to get more 3+ bedroom units by extra stories and different incentives. And they didn't seem to work, so we went back and we tried to tweak those some, and that's what we've done.
Yeah, the impetus being we have a lot of larger families in the community that there aren't units that are large enough for them. And there's
Exactly.
a lot of capacity in the school to take on new students, but we need space for people to grow families here.
Yep. Yeah.
Revi, there's also been some state mandated changes that we've had to implement related to housing. You want to talk us through those?
Sure. Yeah. So 2 of the big state laws that have come forth in the last 3-4 years, one of them being the Home Act, also known as Act 47, that was passed in 2023-2024, and then Act 181 that was passed last year as well. So with the Home Act, well, for a while, I'll preface that for a while, the state has been looking into how we can spur more, how can we encourage more housing development, and how can we, gently put it, how can we force municipalities to take on more of this burden and more of this responsibility to provide housing for Vermonters who need it. And so in order to do this, the state now requires that anywhere that is served by municipal water and sewer service, so anywhere that doesn't have, any lot that doesn't have like a septic or a well, that those lots are now allowed to develop up to 4 units per lot, and that we, the municipalities, the cities, we can't regulate based off of lot size on that much development. So we can't say, so prior to 2023, in many zoning regulations, it's really common to see a single family, so lot hosting a single family dwelling to be X amount, but for every additional unit, it's like X plus 5,000 or X plus 10,000 square feet. And one piece of Act 47 cuts out that X plus 5,000, that all of any type of housing 1 to 4 units has to be X amount of lot area. So that's one piece of that. The Act also reduced parking minimums. So prior to 2023, it's very common to see zoning regulations, including Winooski's, to require 2 parking spaces per unit. The state per residential unit. Thanks. The state reduced that to 1 parking space per residential unit. And then alongside all of that, they also reduced the parking size. So common size for parking spaces is 10 feet by 20 feet, which is pretty big. To think about it spatially, think about it spatially, you can probably lay down on the width of a parking space, but you can't lay down the width of your car, right? So, and that's why I say it's generous. And so the parking space is shrunk to 9 by 18 to match the dimensions of a car more, but also to reduce the amount of pavement that's needed for a development. So that reduces costs. That also helps with the environment by reducing the carbon that's within any type of pavement, asphalt, concrete. We've taken more initiative with these changes to state regulations to do more, to encourage, to allow for more housing. So kind of going back here, I think, so we've not only updated our regulations to align with the changes in state statute, we've also removed parking requirements for non-residential uses in the downtown core, that downtown area that Mike was talking about earlier. We've established bicycle parking requirements across the board. We've really loosened up the changes of the change in use from non-residential to non-residential uses without DRB review and approval. We've created some more allowances, more flexibility with adding units for duplexes and triplexes. That entire change with the priority housing incentives, as mentioned, to increase lot coverage if the housing that the city needs is being provided, that larger family-sized housing is provided, was passed alongside all of these changes. And then with that too, we made some other small minor tweaks here and there. And then alongside all of this, the state had also been thinking about Act 250. Now, Act 250 is a state permitting process that was established in 1970 that regulates any development with 10 or more housing units, 10 acres of commercial development, and then there's also another interesting quirk with Act 250, but those two are the main criteria for Act 250, that they would have to go through an extensive state permitting process alongside the local process with us. So the state had been doing some studies, taking a deeper look at the effectiveness of Act 250 and the relationship between Act 250 and the state housing needs and the housing crisis that we've been in for a while, and what can be done to reduce that permitting load to allow for the development that the state really needs to go forward, alongside keeping in mind what are the cities doing, what are the towns doing, and what is the state doing, and are they pretty much doing the same thing? That's one thing that we found in Winooski, is that the state's criteria for reviewing development was pretty much the same as our criteria for reviewing development. So any applicant looking to do a large-scale project was doing the same process twice for a much longer period of time. So one piece of that was conversations that we've been having at the city about which parts of the city do we want to be exempt from Act 250, to what extent do we want them to be exempt from Act 250, what are the ramifications of having these projects exempt from Act 250, and how will this impact the future of Winooski in this process. With that too, with this whole reform and all these conversations, there have been some small minor changes that the state has put down, telling us that we can't, that we have to allow for shared parking anywhere in the city, something that we hadn't been allowing for residential developments in our residential districts, that they couldn't have a house in one place and park their car at their friend's house that they might have like a handshake agreement with down the block. So trying to loosen up those types of allowances would allow for more housing to be created in more creative ways, and allowing for more flexibility for additional units, additional residential units to pop up throughout the city.
So that's kind of, there's kind of a lot that's been going on for a while. And I do want to highlight, we heard from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission that for the last 5 years, Winooski has had the highest rate of housing production per capita. I think largely thanks to the changes that we've been making to make it easier to add housing to our community. And there's a lot that's happened recently that we still need to see how that plays out and how that impacts the housing landscape.
And on that point, I think it's part of maybe Act 47. I'm not sure if it's Act 47 or 181, but they set housing goals for each community.
Yeah.
And we have a goal of how many new units they want us to create. And I don't have that with me. I forget what it was. There's a high and a low and a medium.
Yeah.
And it's quite a goal.
It's ambitious.
It's very ambitious.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, it is ambitious, and so I mean, there's a lot of things that the state passed that kind of tied our hands. Whether good or bad, we'll see. One of the concerns I have, and I've expressed, is, I think I've expressed anyway, at least in my mind I have, that with these new regulations where you can put up to 4 units on a lot that will support a single family home, what's that mean in terms of single family neighborhoods? And also, we've got this focus on affordable housing. First of all, what is affordable housing, right? But also, we need a well-rounded housing stock. And we've got a pretty good variety of housing in Winooski. We don't have those super high upper end houses, but that's okay. We've got nice neighborhoods and whatnot. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, though I think that folks who live in single-family neighborhoods and single-family homes are probably going to, for the most part, keep them single-family, but out there is the potential to add another unit or two or three. And I'd hate to lose our identity in our single-family neighborhoods, because we have quite a few historic, I say historic, 50, well, my house is almost 50 years old, believe it or not, but anyway, we have a lot of neighborhoods that are very attractive to young families and whatnot. So I'm a little concerned about that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so we have the ability now, someone can build a quadplex essentially anywhere. And we also incentivize accessory dwelling units, which is another detached house on the lot, to do that sort of infill. I think, you know, you reminded me, one of the areas of sort of tweaking that's been happening in the zoning regulations is also around historic preservation. And I wonder if you could just give like a couple sentences about that effort too.
I never give a couple sentences. We have a lot of buildings, properties in the city that are quote unquote historic. What does that mean? Well, to qualify, a building has to be 50 years or older. And as I said, I live in one of the newer residential neighborhoods, and it was built in the late 70s, so it's close to 50 years old. But there are a lot of homes, and we're seeing older homes that were built in the 1800s that are, or early 1900s, that are being torn down for redevelopment. Now, in a lot of cases, at least in some cases, they need to be torn down because they've been neglected, they're falling apart, or they've been altered or whatever. But it would be very sad to lose some of the old homes that make up the history of Winooski. And we do have, I know that Britta Ton, is that her last name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Anyway, she did a survey for us and identified historic properties. And I don't have, there's a bunch of them, but anyway.
Yeah.
And they're doing more work on that as well. So to try to identify the houses that we feel have historic value, and hopefully do something to keep them standing.
To allow them to be redeveloped while retaining that value.
Right, yeah. And in our regulations, we allow for redevelopment if you keep the facade and different things. So we're approaching it. Unfortunately, we found that we thought that we had it covered in previous versions of zoning, but then when you know, it came, the rubber hit the road, it was like, no, there's no legal authority for you to stop them from doing it. So
Yeah,
we're
so it
trying
had
to
to be
strengthen.
rewritten.
Yeah, we're trying to strengthen that language up.
Yeah, I think it's some of the things you're speaking to, like in our community vision statement, we want a diversity of housing options for our diverse population, and there's different ways to look at that to
Right.
make sure we have a lot of options. I think the last big change that I want to make sure we cover is transportation demand management. Folks may be concerned about, like, oh, you're reducing parking requirements. What does that mean for our transportation scenario? So if you want to, Revi, talk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So generally looking at Winooski, it kind of came to me that some of our corridors might be close to peaking with demand and the capacity of those streets, especially as Winooski builds out in the near future. And kind of brought it up with the Planning Commission. We have to start thinking about how people are moving through the environment and the ways that they're moving through the environment, and whether people can move through the environment through other means, through other modes, through other ways. Can someone bike safely from one part of Main Street to the downtown? And is there enough facilities for that? And can someone? What are our bus shelter facilities? What do those look like? So thinking about how we use our roads, the way we use our roads, thinking about the growth of the city over time, and how we are going to change over time. the Planning Commission started discussing methods to encourage other modes of transportation in order to balance out our streets. This isn't to say that we're going to shift from a car-free environment, but there needs to be balance in our streets for everybody to move safely and efficiently through the environment. So to encourage that, we've now required developments in our corridors. I think I have it, yeah. We now require developments in our corridors to include these transportation demand management requirements, which are maybe their bus, their ride credits with Green Mountain Transit, additional bike parking, or some sort of agreement with Car Share Vermont. A range of strategies or a combination of strategies to meet these requirements so people understand that they have other ways to move through the environment and that they don't have to be attached to their own car in order to get from point to point, especially within a city like Winooski, which is so compact. And with that too, the Planning Commission, we're thinking of trade-offs, right? So if someone can move through the city by bike or by bus, and if they're not even driving or if they don't even have a car, then are we just requiring more parking than that's actually needed for that development? So part of that trade-off is, okay, we'll give you a bit more flexibility with the parking requirement, considering that you are providing transportation alternatives on that site. So the parking reduction, keep in mind that it's a reduction for us on what the threshold is to meet the requirement. Right? So it's not that you only need X amount of spaces and that's it. It's that if you want, this is the minimum for meeting the requirement. You can exceed the requirement to a certain extent, but this is the minimum. So just to give you more flexibility, considering that you are offering other modes of transportation or encouraging other modes of transportation for employees, for residents, for anyone that uses that development in that way. So that's part of that trade-off.
And I think in the discussions, we also were cognizant of the fact that we don't really have the infrastructure to eliminate, what we have now,
Right.
because we don't have, a massive public transit system or bike pass or any of that stuff. And we're not going to have it for a while. So we have to recognize that, as Revi said, people aren't going to abandon their cars because we don't have that infrastructure, like a New York City or someplace like that. So.
But it's a way to work towards that from both sides.
Exactly.
Meet our current need, but move us in the right direction.
Right.
Well, I am really excited to have you both here with us today to shed some more light into what may be a pretty complicated topic at times. There's been a lot of work. We're seeing that pay off. I think it's key to take note of how many changes we've implemented recently, that we're going to see some more changes in the future. See how those zoning tweaks impact what is getting developed and what the future of the city holds. I do want to mention that we are also working on inclusionary zoning, which is an adjustment to zoning to require new developments of, is it 20 plus?
Yes.
Yeah, 20 or more housing units to have a certain percent of those be subsidized affordable as we continue to work towards those housing priorities. And there are 170 units currently permitted?
Yes, just about, yeah.
They don't always get built, but there is still activity going on. And then we'll continue through that state process from Act 181 to work towards Act 250 exemption in the city.
And just so folks know, our meetings are generally, is it the third Thursday or the fourth? It fluctuates depending on when. Second?
Yeah,
Second
it just
Thursday.
really depends on my schedule, but
Second. Some months we have 2 meetings and we're trying to get back to 1 meeting.
Yep.
But people are always welcome to come or tune in.
Yeah, all of these changes happen in public, open meetings, public
Yep.
discussion. We welcome community input. And of course, if you can't make it, you can always email thoughts to or call.
Yeah,
To you.
for the
For you for now.
yeah.
For now, to the mayor and anyone on council, members of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, for the rest of the year, the Planning Commission meetings are on the second Thursdays of each month,
Except for this month.
except for this month. But in September, October, November, December, they will be on the
6:30 p.m. at
6:30
City Hall
p.m. at
and on
City
Zoom.
Hall.
Yeah.
Yep.
As all of our meetings, we try to make them accessible from home as well.
Yep.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you very
And I
much.
think it's public that
I'm expecting a child, and we'll be transitioning the mayorship over to Deputy Mayor Thomas Renner next month.
So thank you for your years of great leadership for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, and best of luck to you and, going forward.
Thank you so much, and for all of your service as well, and to everyone else who has engaged in our zoning conversations over the years. I think it's clear that it's an important topic for shaping our city, what it looks like in our future, and want to thank everyone for joining us today for In the World of Winooski.